Thank you. That was actually a very nice greeting. So I think I got a pretty nice introduction, but hey guys, I'm JP from Hartmann Capital. All right, so here's a quick little overview about me. Yeah, so I'm JP. I work with Hartmann Capital on the investing team. We invest across industries, mostly within gaming, entertainment, and tech. I focus specifically on VR investments here. Here's a brief look at what our portfolio looks like. A lot of recognizable names if you're in the Quest ecosystem. We back dozens of top teams, so on and so forth. This is definitely our bread and butter. So there is so much going on in the VR ecosystem, but we only have 30 minutes. And actually, that's a lie. We only have 24 minutes and 6 seconds left. So we're going to have to give sort of an abridged version of what the VR ecosystem looks like. So we're going to give this broad look at the Quest eco today. We're going to dive into the top performers. We're going to see what are the games doing $100 million in revenue doing versus the titles with 5,000 downloads, right? And we're gonna say, what are the best traits, or what are we finding in common with all of these top performers? So this is one of my favorite graphs to look at. This is right now I think this was from May of 25. This is the gross rating count of the top games, right? So you can see what the top performers look like. This is top 100. There's approximately 6,000 on the store for scale. Only about 3,000 or so have any ratings at all. And you can see what the top performers look like. It's actually a pretty interesting mix between free-to-play, free and paid titles, right? This is actually what the composition looks like for the top 100 gross lifetime. It's 62% paid, 38% free. And if you look here at the bottom, you can see what the rating count you need to get to be in this position. So if you're in the top 100, you need 4.3 thousand reviews, which is very achievable. These are really impressive numbers, and they collect sort of a partial image of Quest. But the thing is, the Quest ecosystem is changing, because it doesn't really tell the whole story. You see, the Quest store has changed. That was the lifetime for what the last 5 years of Quest has looked like. In a lot of the original successful titles, these sort of household names that you guys think about that were system sellers for the Quest 2, and even things that came over from Rift and PC VR, they followed a model that looked something like this, right? More of the traditional game studio model. It looked like invest years into game development with a lot of capital. You launch with this big splash and you have this massive push. You either have extra non-dilutive funding from Meta, and you had direct distribution to where you'd be put on the front page. So you were guaranteed eyeballs. So as long as people were in the headset, you're pretty much guaranteed to sell, right? And you came back and reinvested all of that and you did it again. And this worked really well for a while, right? These are the titles that we think about that working with, like a Vader or Immortal, like this big IP system seller. Beat Saber did really well here. Bone Lab, like nice, premium, high quality games. And it's not to say paid doesn't work. There's still plenty of games in the modern VR era where paid can still work. But one game did change the platform in the way games are sold and distributed. We have any guesses? Anyone want to guess the game that changed? Gorilla Tag? Anyone? Yeah, all right, yeah, that was good. You guys got it, right? So Gorilla Tag to me is like the most important VR game because it put us in the previous era to the modern era and really started to set precedent in the way we think about VR games, right? So what did Gorilla Tag really change? What we learned is that discovery can go exponential off-platform, meaning that you were not just relying on people inside the headset to discover the game and play for it. We learned that free-to-play could work. It was common consensus for a very long time that free-to-play wouldn't work in VR because it didn't have the scale that either mobile, PC, or console did. But with 100 million plus in revenue, they kind of changed that precedent. We learned that the product market fit is greater than just what VR evangelicals liked. For a long time, consensus in the industry was very much determined by this sort of class of people who loved VR, were obsessed with it, they were long-term gamers, oftentimes aged, late teenager to somewhere in the mid-40s, and that's what we thought we were making VR games for. But we then learned that, hey, actually there's this massive cohort of teenage boys and girls, 10 to 15, that were willing to spend a lot of time in VR. And we also learned that App Lab, the previous beta distribution network on Quest, was actually a roadblock for getting good content in users' hands. Some of the most retentive content ended up being stuff that came from App Lab. And it showed that successful free-to-play titles, that wasn't a fluke. There became many after who have all done millions in revenue and millions in users. So for the thousands of the games of the Quest Store, what are the top teams doing? What are they doing that's so differentiated where it can seem to be hit after hit, millions of users, millions in revenue? So I should go ahead and note that this is not going to be an exhaustive list because there are a lot of things, but if I had to isolate 4, these would be the 4 that I would look at to say, what are they doing that makes them really stand out or primes them to succeed in VR? And so we're gonna go through them one by one and go and see what breaks down. So first we're gonna talk about free-to-play, right? I mean, free-to-play is pivotal, right? Mostly we can see you already have this higher conversion rate that happens where someone's able to see, there's a lot less friction, they come in, they play, right? This is like a very basic surface level observation. One other thing that we found interesting was that a lot of VR users are not price elastic, but they're price binary. As in, if they see a game for $10 and it goes on sale for $5, they're still not going to convert. There still is that cohort, but there's an entire class that they're only going to download games that are free to download. They may end up converting inside, but that's going to be their only interest. It gives also a higher quantity of opportunities for someone to monetize. Say someone wouldn't be convinced on a $10.99 sell of the initial game, but if they come in, they become invested into it, they enjoy more, it may end up giving an opportunity for them to convert. As well, just from a law of large numbers, you're going to have more options to convert to a paid user. And right, yes, kind of to that next point of someone who might have not taken the risk to buy will come and buy and interact inside of here, all right? And we also found that this would be true for all ages, so not only kid-targeted games, but older audiences as well. We need to talk about multiplayer first, right? The reason the Quest is so unique and what it does so well is it's a $300 teleportation device. And what I mean by that is there's no other technology that can convince you you are in another world for that price with that ease of access. I mean, the closest thing you would have would be what Disney Imagineers are doing with these multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects that you have to come inside in person. There's never been something you can just hop in your living room and be teleported to another world. And we learned that these were best spent with other people because you could be convinced that you were hanging out with others. I mean, talk to someone who spends 12 hours a day in VR chat. There's obviously going to be some level of market there. We also found that emergent social gameplay is free live ops or free live service, right? You're going to end up having a lot more that players can do just by interacting with others. It helps expand the scope of what is possible. Yeah, and the social growth effect, right? You tell your buddy, hey, come join this game with me. I hop in. This is how most player discovery happens. It's typically one person in the 3 to 4 person friend group who says, hey, I just downloaded this new game. Come play with me. And I just force your user base from only interacting with this one user. And there's less opportunities for players just to get bored, right? This is kind of like the analogy. I was thinking about this. Like, how could I present how important this was? Imagine you're in a room. It's a completely plain room, white walls, and there's a red ball on the ground. And that's it. What do you do if you're alone? You maybe like bounce. You could like catch it with yourself. I mean, you get bored pretty quickly if you're just in this environment by yourself. But even if you had just that same context, just a wall with the ball, but you're with someone else, it becomes exponential how much more you can do. You're able to spend so much more time, create these own games, create mini games, experiences, lore, just simply from the context changing of it being single player to multiplayer. And this is one of the biggest learnings that we found from working with top teams is they would develop game modes inside, but emergent game modes would happen just from people coming up and making their own stuff up with the mechanics, which then influenced later design. People love being with other people in VR. It's as simple as that. The third point I want to make is around unique locomotion, right? So when you're thinking about making a really good VR game, it's something that people want to invest their time, retention, and capital into. You also have to think competitively. Where else are they spending their time, right? If your game is unique to VR, that means that they can only get that experience inside of virtual reality. If it's something that's easily replicatable to flat screen or PC, you're going to always have someone who's going to opt out to then go and do the path of least resistance, which will be not in VR, which will be playing on a console or be playing on a computer, right? We know that great movement and feedback is convincing for teleportation as well. When you have really good locomotion and the game feels good to play and you're immersed, it builds a deeper relationship with the audience and the way people are interacting in the world. right? These are all really great example games where they have a moat simply because they cannot be replicated outside VR, right? Gorilla Tag, Gorilla Locomotion, this has set this entire new precedent on how multiplayer games are played. Beat Saber was the first one to discover this meta, to do it right, where you could only do this inside VR. Richie's Plank Experience, very basic sort of concept for a game, but it's not the same if you're looking at a screen versus being inside of it, right? And then Golf Plus, right? Being able to take a swing, feel like you're actually swinging a club. Right, so we've discussed some of the most important parts, or these things that I find to be the commonalities. Free-to-play, multiplayer, locomotive design, and unique design. But there is one that's maybe more important than the rest of them, or what I see in winning teams. And that's the video and social strategy. Right, it's really hard and difficult to overstate this, but where your users are when they're not in their headset, you need to be still in front of them, right? And where are they spending time? Where's this core audience spending time? They're spending time on TikTok. They're spending time on YouTube Shorts, right? They're spending time on Instagram Reels. They're spending time in Discord servers. So you need to be touching those people for where they are when they are not inside the headset. I like to think about the user base not being simply everyone who installs, but anyone who interacts with your content online. They are a user, right? Just a lower value abstracted one, but they will eventually become a user, or at the very least, they will be an advocate for your game, either by viewing, by sharing, by going to DMs. They'll be part of it, right? It is a 1 + 1 = 3 type scenario where a good game plus a good content structure can end up making something that's greater than the sum of their parts. We see that it builds a pipeline, people are ready, they're excited. So this is one side of it, which is you guys, the developers, developing their own video and content side. And then there's the other side, which is giving your, here's some teams I saw crush on socials here. This one over here, this is Derby. This is number 4 on Quest Store. They've done millions of views on TikTok. All very basic videos. I implore everyone to go watch, but it's pretty much just a founder journey where the founder, Jordan, has been able to develop a connection with his audience, and it's a game they all play on TikTok to try to find him inside the game, and it's driven a lot of attention. And then Beyond Sandbox is a title that hasn't come out yet, but they have absolutely crushed it on their video strategy. They're doing millions of views each video, and now they already have 80,000 wish list without being live, which is unprecedented in VR. So this is the other part of the social strategy, right? And this is the one I think a lot of people overlook, is how important it is to build a social relationship with your audience and understanding what the exchange looks like, what social capital looks like. So this core cohort of users, a lot of them are more interested in social capital than they are financial capital, right? Meaning that they would rather have 1 million views than they would have $1,000. So it's important that you give them the tool to be able to do that. So something what the social contract looks like is, if you're a dev, you make a really great game that has a lot of experiences. What the creator will do in return is they make videos, and you're giving them the ability to go and generate views, giving them what they want, and you're getting free eyeballs to your game. Right, and so our portfolio company, Live, actually has a camera system which functionally makes a ability to pull out an iPhone in VR. So this is an example. This is on my personal YouTube channel. This one did about 400,000 views, right? So because I had the ability to pull out my virtual iPhone, record my moment, I was able to generate all these views using the tools that I had, which made it really easy. And then in exchange, Gorilla Tag is getting 400,000 free eyeballs that they would have had to pay for otherwise. But for me, that's an exchange I'm okay making because I'm able to gather, almost 500,000 in social capital from this one video. Right, and so just a quick note on all of this. I really do want to stress that this is non-exhaustive. There is a lot more that goes into this. Good memetics, good monetization, good gameplay loops and designs. But if I had to just break down to the 4, which I see all the teams doing, agnostic of what sector, it is most of these things, right? Some of them can get away with doing 2 and 3. Most of them do 4, but you'll very rarely see you'll see 0 with 0, and you'll see maybe 1 or 2 that have just 1 or 2. So in the sake of time, I do want to go kind of quick on this. I'm not able to go into the depth I'd like to, but I do want to speed run MR versus VR and Horizon Worlds. Right, MR has been a little disappointing, right? This has been the reality of it. This was Meta's big push for a long time with the Quest 3 and the Quest 3S. So what we know from player statistics when I'm looking at the back end of a game, what we know from our portfolio companies is that the composition of the player base right now is about half Quest 3, 3S, and about half Quest 2. Meaning that if you're building something in MR, you've already eliminated half of the total addressable market simply by it being MR, right? People also like to use VR to escape. We found that the most immersive, retentive experiences have been ones where they're in a place of disbelief. And it seems that MR has had trouble delivering that to people for what they've wanted. As well as the multiplayer experience is tough, right? Most of these MR platforms have been co-located multiplayer, meaning that it's multiple people in the same room rather than playing asynchronously. I know this is something they're working on, but co-located is just way too much friction having to add too many users, which really kills the core feature of VR. So right now, I'm not too bullish on MR, especially MR gaming. I haven't seen anything that has sold me otherwise. And I'd like to give just one example here from our portfolio company, Sin Studio. So they made Battlegrounds, which was a premium VR single-player fighting game. They launched it before the store shift. The game did really well. But over the last year, they've launched 2 titles, right? Guardians of Realms, which is a MR sword fighting game, single-player, with mod support. And they also launched Battlegrounds, which is a free-to-play multiplayer, completely VR experience, right? One of them has 3,000 reviews in the store. The other one has 32,000. It's topping the charts. You guys want to take a guess which one is which? Yeah. I also just want to quickly touch on Horizon Worlds. So Horizon Worlds is still very nascent in its place. There have been some teams who I've seen crush it, and they've done really well. But Meta has been funding to try to make this really into a platform, into a Roblox, into an Unreal Engine Fortnite, really trying to control the end content layer. And it's been pretty mixed results so far, right? A lot of the content on there is abhorrent, not getting any sort of users. What I've seen is that a lot of the best content on Horizon Worlds still follows the principles mentioned in VR before, and still does have a focus on some level of quality. If you are a developer, there are a lot of incentives going on right now. So take that for what you will, but Meta is opening up the pockets to Horizon World developers. So take that up, and what I do see from the best ones, and kind of that, they do have those aforementioned traits, like Spin the Bottle is, I think, a really, really great example of that. But there is opportunity, right? I think there might be a diamond in the rough from people overlooking it. A lot of devs are not giving it the time of day, but Meta wants it to happen. So if you are good at what you do and you can understand the Horizon ecosystem, I think there's opportunity there. Quick TLDR, just recapping everything we talked about. The Quest Store's changed. Developers can still win, but the strategy has changed as well. Socials, unique mechanics, multiplayer, and free-to-play are the traits that the most successful teams follow. And you can be successful only using 2 of the 4, but the best teams typically use all of them. Thank you guys so much for coming. Once again, I'm JP Minetos. You can add me here. I write long-form theses and also a lot of tweets. I'd recommend connecting with me on LinkedIn and X. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. And we're going to open the floor for Q&A. Looks like we got about 5 minutes left or so. So if anyone has any questions, if we want to do any Q&A, got one right over here. How much time do I spend in VR a day? Oh, yeah. Probably more than my girlfriend would like. I probably do about, on a weekday, 30 minutes to an hour. On a weekend, probably 2 hours a day. Yeah.
So you mentioned mixed reality being tomorrow's software on today's hardware.
Yep.
You're not bullish on MR right now. Do you still think it's a worthwhile investment for developers who want to be building tomorrow's software? Is it a worthwhile investment to start developing titles now to, I guess, establish, like, get used to that sort of environment?
So that's where I'm kind of sitting with a lot of the, it's a really good question, right? So where I'm sitting with a lot of these developer frameworks, either with like Horizon OS or what Vision Pro has done, is like, right now these are more like an elementary type products to develop for the end game of AR glasses, like this everyday wear, right? But it doesn't really make sense in MR. So why would you wear this massive 6-off headset outside, either from the social repercussions or the battery or the logistics? It doesn't really work. So I would say it makes sense if that is your end goal. And understanding that, I don't think it's going to be a profitable endeavor just to focus all in on MR, right? If your idea is to build a relationship, say with Meta or with Snap, and you want to start building for this right now, and especially if they're giving out grants to help you do it, that can make sense. But if I were building a brand new business today and I said I wanted to be a successful VR content studio, I would not be building in MR.
What monetization strategies for free-to-play
Oh, well, there are a lot of really good strategies. I don't know how much time I can really get into all of this, but most of them are predicated, or like the classic way to think about it is either on status or on acceleration. So what status looks like oftentimes is cosmetic, right? The way a lot of these people spend time in these worlds is it is their social third place. In the same way that, 20 years ago after work, you'd go hang out in a bar, or even if you're a kid, you're gonna go hang out at the mall. Instead of that, they're coming and spending time in here, right? So those same sort of social dynamics that we saw exist for a long time are still very important in here. Things that show you're exclusive, things that show you're rich, things that show your high status, right? So that's typically what works with cosmetics. I've seen a few other strategies work as well. There's been some that have been working with subscription models recently for accelerants inside the game or getting exclusive drops. And also something that's now become part of the meta is consumable items, right? So if it's some sort of competitive game or casual competitive, if you have something that you can consume that gives you a unique advantage and or it gives you status, that seems to work really well as well. Thanks.
Do you see investments shifting towards Horizon Worlds, or is standalone VR still viable, like financially? I work with a lot of studios helping them ship VR titles, and they've been struggling the last 9 to 12 months with the shift to Horizon Worlds and the focus on that. Even successful titles, the revenue has dropped sharply. And if you go on Reddit, a lot of people are not happy with how things were going in general. So as far as like influx of money is concerned, you as an investment company, do you shift focus towards that, or?
So most of the funding for Horizon Worlds has been through Meta, right? It's not really been private capital, it's been Meta giving grants, as in, hey, we want to bootstrap this ecosystem, the same way they did with the third-party ecosystem half a decade ago. Now there's a ton of great content that is standalone Quest, but they want to expand and say, hey, we want Horizon Worlds to be Roblox, we're going to come and fund in there. We haven't seen anything that has been venture scalable yet. And even when investing into third-party VR content, we are very selective in what we think that can have the venture scale inside. I would say for funding, I've only seen private funding, so venture funding for third-party games. I haven't seen it yet for Horizon Worlds, but as I said, it's a very nascent industry still, so I have not convicted one way or another. Right now, I'm looking optimistic, but a little skeptical at Horizon Worlds. Anyone else?
Last question.
Last question?
Yeah.
Do you want to go up here?
Sorry.
Thanks, JP, for this interesting talk. I know you're focused on entertainment. What on education? How are apps doing there in terms of who are the big players there? Just an app that schools are using or not really?
Yeah, so education is a completely different market from this,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I intentionally didn't want to talk about enterprise, or I didn't want to talk about healthcare. There are pretty meaningful companies. We have one in our portfolio actually called Victory XR, which they license with, I think, 150 universities so far across the United States and Europe to be used as like an education teleportation device. But you can't really look at these gross view counts or download numbers since the distribution's different. Either doesn't always come from the store, and they oftentimes have these private contracts. So.
Victory.
Happy to follow up with you after about that, though.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, great. Thank you, guys. This is great.